guys, it's Olivia and welcome back to Live in Literature. Thank you so much for all the love and support I received in my last video, and if you have not seen it yet, feel free to head out to my channel to check it out. Well guys, I am so excited to be here with you today and excited about today's topic. As you have seen from the topic today, we are doing the very popular book talk or TikTok trend. If you like this book, read this one. Or if you like these books, read this one. And now this has really been really popular on Book Talk, and it's probably been popular on Book Talk since like TikTok and Book Talk like it became a thing. And I love Book Talk trends and I love Book Talk, but sometimes I've got to say it like it is. Book Talk makes bad recommendations.
You lied to me? And what are you, a sheep?
Or recommendations that I don't agree with. They will suggest a book that they'll be like, oh my gosh, if you liked A Court of Thorns and Roses, if you liked ACOTAR, you should read this, this, and this. And they'll suggest these like very mediocre, very bad, very not like well-written books that I'm just like, this is not even close to ACOTAR. And so I want to come on here today to recommend some of Book Talk's most finest literature specimens to you. I'm here to recommend some of Book Talk's most popular books, and I just went through and I picked some Book Talk's most popular from over the past, I would say like 2 or 3 years. I really tried to curate the books that like, if you liked this book, then the book I'm going to recommend for you is going to be so similar and very like similar energy, but it's not going to be the same story. Like obviously it still has to be different enough, it has to be unique enough. It can't be the exact same thing. I mean, of course, like wouldn't we all love that if it was just like over and over and over again? I mean, if I could just keep reading Throne of Glasses over and over and over again, I would. I just would, because I would just continue to read about Daddy Rowan Whitethorn for the rest of time and eternity, which would not be a bad thing. So
I do it over and over again. That's my life, over and over and over and over and over and over.
But for today, I'm here to recommend, if you liked this book, then read this one. And let's get started. The first one and most obvious recommendation I'm going to make for you guys today is, of course, if you liked A Court of Thorns and Roses, which obviously, let's be real, SJM is the GOAT of fantasy. Nothing's going to top her. I have searched high and low, far and wide my entire life.
He endures blistering winds and scorching desert. He climbs to the highest bloody room of the tallest bloody tower.
Trying to find something that makes me feel the same way that SJM does. Now, to put a personal caveat on this, TOG, Throne of Glass, in my opinion, there's not a series like it out there. There's nothing for me similar enough, with enough world building enough, that is built up enough to be Throne of Glass, or to even be close to Throne of Glass. Whereas I think that A Court of Thorns and Roses is a little bit more similar, and it's a little bit more like, I feel like there's a way to like find something that somewhat falls into the vein of this book, or something that falls something somewhat similar to this book. Do I think ACOTAR is one of the greatest things ever written? Obviously, yes. But I think that it is not as strong as Throne of Glass, and therefore I think it can have a companion, something that can be similar to it. And therefore I will recommend my queen of queens, my love of my life, Miss Carissa Broadbent's Serpents in the Wings of Night. Now, I remember when Serpents came out and I was really hating on it because, first of all, the cover is hideous.
What is that? Ugh, it's hideous.
That aside, to be honest, I was just kind of like, oh, is this just another like Kindle Unlimited? Is this just another like once off, like an indie author, whatever? I just was really like underplaying it. And I finally picked it up this year, and as many of you know who've watched any of my videos over this past 6 months, it's one of the greatest things that I've ever held in my hands. One of the greatest fantasies, duologies I've ever read. Like, I'm obsessed with Serpents in the Wings of Night and this world, Nyaxia, the world that Carissa Broadbent has built in here. Now, similarities. Here's where I think the similarities fall in. I think I remember when I read Serpents in the Wings of Night, I said this was the first book that made me feel the same way that ACOTAR makes me feel. Because it's true enemies to lovers. And I would say that ACOTAR is true enemies to lovers. Like, it's truly like you don't know who you can trust in any of these books. That's why I feel like a lot of the times when people are recommending an enemies to lovers, I want it to be cutthroat. I want it to be true enemies. I want them to loathe each other, hate each other, want to slice each other's throats.
You're such a dick!
Every day I wake up and I hope you're dead.
Okay? And I feel like you get that kind of cutthroat energy in Serpents. Now, I have to agree. I think that Serpents is a little bit more cutthroat than this one is. Now, if we go to book 2, though, A Court of Mist and Fury, that I feel like is very level playing field of the cutthroatness. But I do think that, like, the cutthroat energy comes from this. Now, I will say, this is fae, this is vampires. Very different. But I will say, like, obviously sexy immortal people falls into a similar category. Sexy immortals, sexy immortals. You can't, tomato, tomato. Like, they're very, very, very sexy.
He's so hot!
Other similarities that these books have, I would also say, of plot twists and kind of like pulling one over on the reader. These books both pulled one over on me, and I would say that they have a similar way of doing it in like energy and reaction. Oh my gosh, absolutely devastating on both accounts. Again, I think that these two are very similar books and very similar energy, and most importantly, excellent writing, which I can't ask anything of a book more than to just have excellent, well thought out writing. And I think that Carissa Broadbent and Sarah J. Maas are sisters in that. Next, moving on to one of Book Talk's most popular book recommendations of this year, we have Powerless by Lauren Roberts. Obviously, Powerless stepped onto the scene. We all know that it is essentially like, I think that we can all admit that the plot is, it's pretty basic. It's a basic plot. We've got elites and ordinaries. We have a girl pretending to be an extraordinary, but she's, or to be an elite, but she is an ordinary. She comes to a castle to compete in the games, and essentially, like, she's winning the hand of the people. She meets a sexy prince who's also the enforcer. They have an enemies to lovers. It's great. It's almost like medieval Hunger Games. Now, if you are wanting to read something similar to Powerless, look no further than Alex Astor's Lightlark. I would say writing-wise, these two women are matched. To be honest, I think the writing is very mid. It's very mediocre. It's YA, so like that makes sense. It's YA, everyone, so don't come for my throat. The writing is really mid, but you know what gets me about both of these books? The banter. The banter is non-stop. The banter is what saves both of these books.
I don't know when.
You've charmed me.
Both of these books, to be honest, would be like a 3-star, maybe even a 2.5, 3.5 if I'm being generous, writing wise. But the banter in both of these books saves them both by miles. Miles, I tell you. Like, the banter saves this series. And so I think that if you are looking for something like in the same vein as Powerless, read Lightlark. Both have a subtle love triangle. Subtle, I would say, for both of these. Both of these have a subtle love triangle. This one might be a little bit more intense than this one is, but I'm telling you, like, subtle love triangle, extremely good banter, extremely charismatic bad boys, and two women who I would say have very similar stories. In Lightlark, it's pretty much the same. Like, she's supposed to have all this power. She doesn't. She goes to a thing to compete, and she's literally like pulling a ruse over everyone, being like, oh, look, I'm like so powerful. Doesn't have any power. So I'm telling you, both of these books like are about very similar women, like stuck in like very subtle love triangles. But let's be real, the bad boy comes out to play, and the banter is unreal in both of these. These are a very similar book. If you loved Powerless, you will love Lightlark. Like, it's a very similar energy. You will enjoy both of these books. Next one I want to recommend is obviously a Book Talk favorite and also one of my favorites from last year. It was in my top 5 best reads of 2023. We have Divine Rivals. Unfortunately, my copy is being borrowed from a friend. And so, Divine Rivals. I love Divine Rivals. We all love Divine Rivals. It's almost like World War II fantasy and meets like journalism and these two journalists who are enemies but then fall in love during the war times. I love a wartime novel. I love nothing more. And to be honest, okay, my recommendation might come as a surprise and might not be everyone's cup of tea, but roll with me for a second. To me, Divine Rivals doesn't read as a fantasy. It reads more as like a historical fiction with a subtle amount of fantasy element. Now, this is where you get into, if you liked Divine Rivals, you should read From Sand and Ash by Amy Harmon. Now, From Sand and Ash is a true historical fiction. This is actually a World War II novel taking place in Italy. And basically it goes over like what happened in World War II with the Jews that were living in Italy at the time. It's a love story between a girl and a Catholic pastor or priest. and like the love that they have for each other, but he can't give into that because he's a man of the church.
It's hot. Damn hot. Real hot. Hot and this is my shorts. I can cook things in it.
So Divine Rivals, I feel like to me more reads as like a wartime romance novel than it does a fantasy fiction historical like war novel. It reads more historical fiction to me. I feel like the love between our two MCs in Divine Rivals and in From Sound and Ash are very similar couple wise. I feel like the struggles that they have to go to survive in the war are very similar. This one I will say is probably a lot heavier than Divine Rivals is because it's a true historical fiction. Like this actually happened in World War II, like devastating stuff. It's awful. But From Sand and Ash is one of those books that is like truly so special to my heart. I sobbed and cried my way through this book. This is a standalone novel, and it is literally so incredible and so moving and heartbreaking. And I feel like Divine Rivals like really gave that to us. Like they gave us like heartbreaking romance, jaw-dropping wartime like battles. Like we are talking, to be honest, nothing gets me more than like the women like blowing their handkerchiefs and kissing their lovers goodbye as they go off to World War II and receiving the letters. It's just, I'm sorry, like it's an awful thing that happened, but it's romantic as all get out.
How romantic.
And that's why I have to recommend From Sand and Ash as Divine Rivals, like similar in this scenario. I think that I think this is an incredible book, and I think Divine Rivals is literally a match made in heaven for these two together. So if you enjoy Divine Rivals, I think you'll enjoy From Sand and Ash. This is a wonderful book. I never stop recommending Amy Harmon. She really is one of the greatest authors of this generation. Next, we have another one of Book Talk's favorites, and one that kind of took the world by surprise. We have Miss One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig. One Dark Window, again, last year, one of my favorite novels of last year. The One Dark Window duology is flawless in my opinion. It is absolutely perfect. A gothic fantasy, an interesting magic system, like characters that you can't help but fall in love with. I ate it up. And to match her up with someone, I think if you enjoyed One Dark Window, you should read For the Wolf by Hannah Whitten. I love Hannah Whitten. I think she is so talented. And I think that Rachel Gillig and Hannah Whitten have a very similar writing style because they both enjoy writing gothic fantasy. For the Wolf is more of like, it's almost like a Little Red Riding retelling, but it's completely different. It's about two twin sisters. One sister is going to rule the kingdom. The other one's going to be the sacrifice to save the kingdom. She is sent away into the woods essentially as like a sacrifice, and she's just accepted her fate that she's going to die. But instead of meeting her maker and meeting the wolf in the woods, she meets a man who essentially like runs the woods with his magic and things like that. I'm telling you, this is a lovely gothic fantasy, and it's also a duology. And the second book, very similar to like One Dark Window, where One Dark Window has Two Twisted Crowns, and Two Twisted Crowns was more about like other characters, like the side characters that didn't really get as much screen time in this first one. The second one of this one, For the Throne, is very similar to Two Twisted Crowns. I honestly think maybe like, it's funny, I think that One Dark Window is the stronger of the two in the duology, and I think For the Throne, the second one of this one, is the stronger of the two. But I think both of these books, like these books together, are amazing gothic fantasies. I think that they have compelling female characters. I think that they have strong, interesting magic systems that are built very, very cool and like very like properly, and like the magic system is like, I don't really feel, I feel like you can't really poke holes in it. I feel like the magic system is like airtight, and I really enjoy like the dark grittiness of both of these books. I'm telling you, like if you enjoyed One Dark Window, you will love For the Wolf. Like this isn't a great book. I absolutely loved it, and these two are fabulous. And last but certainly not least on this list, we have, of course, The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, one of Book Talk's finest, one of Taylor Jenkins Reid's most beautiful and powerful novels, about a young woman who wants to be a movie star in the 1950s, and she will do anything that it takes to get it. And something that I love about Evelyn Hugo is that she feels so timeless. Like her entire story is timeless. She feels like everlasting in everything that she does. The story spans decades. It spans like time and eternity. I feel like it's the tale as old as time for Hollywood, and like the things that people wanted, seeking after desires, going after what they wanted, no matter the cost. I just love it. And interestingly enough, and not everyone might agree with my pick, but I think that this book has a very similar energy to this book, The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. We have The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. Now, V.E. Schwab is one of the greatest authors of all time. Probably, she's definitely in my top 3, that's for sure. It probably goes SJM, Amy Harmon, V.E. Schwab, and then Carissa Broadbent in my order of authors. V.E. Schwab is incredible. Absolutely fabulous. This book, The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, has, I feel like, a similar energy that The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo does. So essentially, a young woman in the early 1700s, Miss Addie LaRue, makes a deal with the devil, essentially, similarly, kind of, and essentially wishes that she could live forever. But there's a catch, and the catch is that no matter who she meets, no matter how long they look at her, once they look away, they will forget her, and she will be forgotten. And so I feel like both of these books have a similar message of, like, what do you have to do to be remembered by history? You know, Evelyn's, like, dream was to be a star, and she always knew she was destined for more. And I feel like Addie feels the same way, like, trapped by her society, trapped by the confines of what is allowed and what's not allowed, and doing anything that it takes to, like, get that dream. And then once they both achieve some sort of it, they realize there are negatives to this. Like, they didn't really, like, it's not the thing that's going to bring them happiness, essentially. I feel like Addie and Evelyn are very similar, very kindred spirits. Like, they don't want to be forgotten. They don't want to be nothing. They want to be something. And Addie's issue is more about the fact that she can't be remembered. And Evelyn's issue is that, like, everyone knows who she is, but no one really knows who she is, like, on the inside. I feel like these two people are kindred spirits in that way. Obviously, Addie LaRue is a, like, fantasy. It's like historical fantasy, essentially. This one's true historical fiction, or just fiction, whatever you want to call it. I think it's like historical fiction, obviously. And so I feel like these two women, though, like, throughout history, throughout time, are chasing to, like, find themselves, but also, like, to live, like, I was gonna say, quote a Taylor Swift lyric, to live for the hope of it all. Just to, like, live for now, and live for the time, and, like, do anything that it takes to achieve their dreams and their goals. And they each come to different conclusions in that. But I feel like these books are very kindred spirits, and they're both extremely well written. This one, Taylor Jenkins Reid, V.E. Schwab, obviously. Like, they are so well written, it's insane. And I just think that everyone should read both of these books. They're both incredible, and I think that they are a good match for one another. So that is all the book recommendations that I have for you today. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and if you did, do not forget to like, comment, subscribe to the Living Literature YouTube channel. And if anyone has any video suggestions that they would like to see on the channel, please feel free to comment them down below. But regardless, I hope you guys are having an amazing summer. I love you guys the most, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye!